Here's a series of Bigfoot encounters I thought you all might like. All right, here we go. There's a place called Nimblewell inside the Chattahoochee National Forest. Every summer when I was growing up, my nanny would take all 7 of us grandkids camping there for a week at a time. Normally, there wasn't anyone else at any of these camping spots, so we ran barefoot all over the place. We caught crawdads and salamanders and trout on cane poles. Our parents would probably have a fit if they knew she let us go away from the camp without an adult, but we were little heathen rednecks, and she knew that if someone took us, they wouldn't keep us long. Oh, that's a good one. I've never heard that before. That's a great one. In the evenings, my parents and our papa would come up after work and stay the night with us so that no one tried anything. One of those nights, my cousins and I decided that we weren't ready to go to bed. When everyone got in the tents and went to bed, we stayed up playing cards. But it was hard to stay quiet when we started giggling and laughing. There were so many other noises from bugs and the creek that the rest of our family probably didn't even hear us. Well, there we were in the middle of the night giggling our butts off when all of a sudden something across the creek let out a holler. We both shut up and froze, and we noticed we couldn't hear any bugs or sounds of the night besides the creek. It screamed again, and then it screamed another time. At first, we thought it was someone on drugs or something lost out there in the woods. We turned on the radio and put our chairs side by side, and we kept playing cards. About 10 or 15 minutes later, that thing yelled again and again, but this time it was right across the creek, and it was much closer to us. My cousin turned the radio off, and we both stood up and looked in the direction of the noise, trying to see something, but it was pitch black. Our papa's truck was parked facing the creek about 30 feet to the right of us. I told my cousin that if it screamed again, we would run to the truck, turn the bright lights on, and scare it away. About that time, it let out a scream so loud, and it's a miracle it didn't wake everybody up. We took off. We jumped in the driver's side of the truck and slammed the doors, and we locked them. We flipped the lights on and watched them light up the creek, but we didn't see anything. We decided that if we saw or heard it again, we would lay on the horn and we would wake everybody up. The next thing we knew, it was morning, and Papa knocked on the truck window and he woke us up. We had to unlock the door manually because we ran the battery dead, running the lights all night. As soon as the door was open, we both started talking at the same time, trying to tell them what had happened. Well, Nanny got us calmed down and said it was probably a black panther or a bobcat. They were glad that we were okay, but they were mad because we left them to die. We went on about our day, but that night we made sure to go to bed with everybody else. I'm not sure exactly what scared us that night. I just know that we were terrified. In April of 2015, I was staying with a friend who lived near the Chattahoochee National Forest. The house was right on the road, and the back of the house butted up to the bottom of a cow pasture. Across the road was another cow pasture that bordered the forest. Well, my friend was out of town, so it was just my dog and me for the weekend. It was Saturday night. It was around 3 in the morning, and I was lying in bed listening to the dead quiet of the night and trying to fall asleep, when all of a sudden I heard a roar come from across the road in the pasture. It was like nothing I had ever heard, and I stood up and walked to the front door and opened it so I could hear better. As soon as the door was open, all the hair on my body stood up, and the chills ran down my spine. My dog was next to me, whimpering with her tail tucked. Well, the roaring stopped and then started again, and my dog ran to my room. So I closed the door, and I found her under the bed, and it took all I had to get her out from under there. I put her under the covers with me, and we lay there listening, and the noise stopped after a few minutes, and when we woke up the next morning, she refused to go outside. I had to pick her up and sit her outside to use the bathroom. I walked with her around the house, and I looked over toward the pasture. The cows were grazing like they normally did. Later, my friend's boyfriend said that I probably just heard a cow, but I told her later in private that I thought it was a Bigfoot. She believed me. She told me someone she knew from the area had seen one in her backyard when she was a little girl, and to this day, she will not set foot in those woods. Then in November of 2015, I went hunting with my boyfriend and his friend in Nimblewell. It was the second time I had been hunting with him there. We went in around 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we parked the truck and we started spraying on the liquid dirt. His friend went up the logging road above the truck and we took the other road down to the creek bottom. 30 minutes later, we got to the deer blind, which was a little wooden hut. It was an old and raggedy thing, but it had a roof on it in case it rained. We were 15 feet or so from the creek bank, which was to the right of us, and to the left were pines, but not too thick because we could see a good way through them. The roadbed was back behind us, and we could have seen or heard anything that would have come through there. A little while before dark, I got a whiff of something awful. It smelled like a musky, wet dog mix with trash and crap. I looked at my boyfriend and I whispered, "Did you do that?" He laughed and said no, but he smelled it too. He thought it may have been a bear, but I had caught the scent of plenty of bears before, and none of them had smelled remotely this bad. The smell only got stronger, and it was so thick that I felt like I could cut through it with a knife. And we both looked around wide-eyed, trying to see what it was, when my boyfriend said, "Did you hear that?" At this point, I realized that everything had gone quiet. It didn't make sense how something that smelled so bad had gotten so close to us without us seeing or hearing it. But that was it for us. My boyfriend told me that it was time to go. My boyfriend stepped out of the blind first and held the door open for me. I carried the backpack. He strapped the rifle over his shoulder, and we started walking back the way we came. Our eyes had managed to adjust to the light, so we didn't pull our flashlights out yet. As soon as we got to the logging road, we heard a twig snap in front of us, and we froze. My boyfriend took my hand, and he said, "If it gets too close, I'm going to fire a warning shot, but you keep walking." We both knew what it was, but neither of us said it out loud. We still had a 20-minute walk uphill to get to the truck and no phone service to call his friends. Another stick broke ahead of us, but the sound wasn't like someone had stepped on it. It was like someone was taking sticks and snapping them on purpose. At one point, my boyfriend stopped and turned the flashlight on. He shined it down the road because he thought he had seen something standing in the middle of the road. And then another stick broke, and my boyfriend got between me and the wood line, and he handed me the light, and he took the gun off his shoulder. We started walking again, and every 20 feet or so, a stick broke. Whatever it was paralleling us as we walked up the hill, and we were terrified. When we finally got to the truck, we didn't even take anything off. We just jumped in. My boyfriend told his friend that we needed to get out of there fast, but he didn't tell him what happened, and we never talked about that thing again. What scared me the most was how it got so close to us in the deer blind without making any noise. No twigs snapping or sticks breaking until we got out of the blind. And when it did make noise, it felt intentional, like it was trying to scare us. Then in September of 2018, my husband and I bought a house and some land in the same town that we grew up in. We have a pond and 2 creeks, and our land butts up to 100 acres that no one lives on. Occasionally, someone hunts the land, but we have never seen anyone there. When we first moved there, I would leave the house at 5:45 a.m. to go to work. We have a motion sensor light on all the porches. One morning, I was surprised to see that the lights were on at that side of the house that morning. I walked down to the passenger side of my car and I began putting my bags in. I thought I had heard something by the porch where the lights were on, but my husband's truck was parked in the way, so I couldn't see it. Well, I stood there for a moment listening. It was the sound of something walking on gravel. It was loud and it scared me, so I immediately jumped into the passenger side of the car and I locked the doors. I climbed over to the driver's side and turned my car on and I flipped the brights on. I was about to call my husband, but I decided against it and I just drove off to work. A few nights later, it was 11 p.m. I let my 3 dogs out before we went to bed. I walked with them over to the wood line, and right away I smelled that same awful scent that I smelled hunting in the blind a few years before, and the memories came flooding back, and I called my dogs in quickly. When we got inside, I told my husband that something was out there. He grabbed his gun and his headlamp and his cone light, and we ran outside. Now, we didn't see anything, but we could hear something heavily walking through the woods away from us. The woods around our house are pine trees and laurel thickets everywhere you look. My husband said it was probably a deer, and we went back in the house. 2 nights later, I heard heavy footsteps in the woods again, but this time it was more than one. It sounded like heavy people walking on 2 legs, and the smell lingered in the air. My husband said it was deer again, and for me to stop being paranoid. He's a straight-up mountain man, and he has hunted and he's run raccoons and hogs and bears most of his life. He's been all over these hills and hollers running dogs and has never seen or heard a Bigfoot, so until he does, they are not real to him. One Sunday morning, it was just getting daylight, and I got up and I let the dogs out. Our pond is 15 yards from our front porch. On the other side of the pond is an old logging road that comes down to our driveway. And it's thick with bushes and trees, and you can't see the road across the pond unless it's wintertime. I stepped off the porch and I thought I heard someone talking over behind the pond. My first thought was that someone had snuck down here to go fishing on our property, so I started walking toward the water. My other dogs came running from behind me and went in the same direction. And about that time, another noise came from the same area. Now, I never heard anything like that before in my life. It was loud and it was high-pitched and it sounded like chattering. I froze and my hair stood up on end. The dogs froze and their ears perked up. Then the same noise came from the woods back behind my house. I was pregnant at that time, so I turned around and I waddled myself as fast as I could back into the house. And I woke up my husband and I told him something was out there, but as usual, he just looked at me like I was crazy. In June, I heard wood knocking from the property that meets ours, but of course my husband didn't hear it. I went exploring a couple of weeks ago and I found some tree structures on our property that looked to have been there a while. I think there are more Sasquatch than we think and that they move around. My husband might not believe me, but I think that they were curious and were checking us out when we first moved in to see what we were like. Okay, well, that's a pretty good story. She has never seen anything. She just hears noises in the woods and she just assumes it's a Bigfoot. I have to be honest, and this is nothing against this woman. I can tell by the way she writes, she's probably got a great sense of humor. But I might be like her husband and just say, you're just turning this noise into something you think is scary and it's just a regular noise. I'm not trying to debunk that this is or isn't Bigfoot. I'm just saying that unless you see it or some kind of evidence of it. Now, she does have some evidence. It's the odors, which her description of that odor was pretty funny. And then she blamed it on her boyfriend. That's a classic. But I don't know. It's like I have to see something, and I've told y'all before, I've never even seen with my own eyes any kind of sign of any kind of monster living in the woods ever. And I'm out there every day. I'm in Mississippi. I'm not up in the mountains in the Chattahoochee National Forest, and maybe they don't live here. I don't know. But one thing I did was love her story. She is a good writer and she's really expressing serious concerns that she has in a real legible way. And it's not funny. I wouldn't laugh at her, but I think if the woman was, I can just see her sitting across from me in a lawn chair across the fire telling a bunch of people this story and getting real animated about it, and and getting mad because her husband doesn't believe her. But I think y'all know what I'm saying. But I read them all. I love this story. I love the way it was written. And I think she may be onto something, but maybe not. Anyway, short podcast. Hope you guys liked it, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks.